He lost both arms saving the dragon princess, then awoke with ancient dragon claws. The salvage drone came back with something that had a heartbeat. Reed noticed it on the bioscanner before anyone else did. He was sitting at the back of the Greywing's cargo bay, eating cold rice from a tin when the small screen on the wall blinked twice. He set the tin down and walked over. The readout was faint but steady. Biological, warm, alive barely. He called up to the bridge, "Captain Waller, you seeing this?" A pause, then her voice came through the speaker, dry and careful. "I see it. Don't touch anything yet." Reed was already pulling on his work gloves. The drone had locked onto a cracked escape pod drifting inside the debris field above Drakville, a planet that had not appeared on any commercial route for 200 years. The field was old, collapsed orbital station long dead. Most salvage crews stayed away from Drakville space. The reason was not written in any official record. It was the kind of reason that passed from crew to crew in quiet voices at port bars. The Drakethi lived there, or had lived there. Nobody was sure anymore. Nobody had seen one in decades. Reed did not think about any of that when the pod came through the bay doors. It was smaller than he expected. The hull was dark, almost organic-looking, with faint ridge patterns running along the sides like scales pressed into metal. One end had been torn open. Something had hit it very hard, and whatever was inside had survived only because the other end held together. Darrow came down from the upper deck, took one look, and stopped walking. "Reed, that pod has markings on it." "I know. Those are Drakethi markings." "I know." "Reed, get the med kit. The one under the second bench, not the small one." Darrow stared at him for another 2 seconds, then went and got the med kit. The pod hatch was jammed. Reed used the pry bar, working carefully, because whatever was inside was still alive and he did not want to make anything worse. When the hatch finally gave, the smell hit him first, something warm and smoky, like embers after a fire settles down. Then he saw her. She was curled tight, the way something curls when it is trying to hold itself together. Scales of deep amber with thin gold lines running through them like cracks filled with light. One wing, and Reed had read enough to know what it was, a true Drakethi membrane wing, was torn badly, folded wrong, pressed against the pod wall at an angle that made him wince. Burns across the left side of her torso. A long gash along her neck, dried and dark. She was young. He could not have explained how he knew that. He just knew. He checked her breathing first. Shallow but present. Her eyes were closed. He reached in and pressed 2 fingers carefully to the base of her neck, the way he had been taught to check pulse in species with non-standard cardiovascular layout. He felt something slow, deep, like a drum struck underwater. "She's alive," he said. Darrow had come up behind him. "She's Drakethi." "Yes." "Read the Drakethi are, they're not exactly." "Get me the thermal blanket. The silver one." Reed was already leaning into the pod, checking the wing. He did not know Drakethi anatomy in detail. Nobody did. There were no full medical records available to civilian crews. He worked from what he knew about living tissue, about burns, about blood loss, and about what the body needs when it has been through something terrible. Warmth, pressure on the wound, stillness. He gave her all 3. Captain Waller came down 20 minutes later. She stood at the edge of the bay and looked at the pod. At the figure Reed had carefully moved onto a flat cargo board with the thermal blanket wrapped around her, and then at Reed. "You understand what this is," Waller said. It was not a question. "Someone almost died," Reed said. "Now maybe they won't." "She is the Drakethi. We do not know which faction, which brood, which. She's got a torn wing and burns on half her body, and her pulse is about 30% of what it should be." Reed did not look up from what he was doing. "I'll worry about the politics when she's stable." Waller was quiet for a moment. "I'll plot a course to neutral space, but Reed, whatever this pulls in after it, that's on you." "Understood." Waller left. Darrow sat on a crate nearby, watching Reed work, not saying anything for once in his life. The Drakethi female did not move for a long time. Then, near the end of the second hour, her eyes opened. They were gold deep, still gold like something molten that had cooled but not hardened. She looked at the ceiling of the Greywing's cargo bay. Then she turned her head slowly and looked at Reed. He met her eyes. He did not move back. He did not smile or speak. He just stayed where he was, hands still, giving her time to understand that she was not in danger. She looked at him for a long moment. Then her eyes closed again. Reed exhaled slowly and went back to work. An hour later, the Greywing's comm system made a sound none of them had ever heard before. Not a standard hail, not a distress ping, something older, something that seemed to come from very far away and arrive all at once. Darrow looked at the source readout and went pale. Reed. I heard it. That signal, it's coming from inside Drakvil's orbit, deep inside. Darrow swallowed. Something big just started moving. Reed looked down at the sleeping figure on the cargo board. Whoever she was, somebody very powerful was already looking for her. And now they had found the Greywing instead. She doesn't ask for help. The first thing she did when she woke up was put her claws around his throat. Not tight, not crushing, just there, 4 long amber-colored talons resting against the side of Reed's neck, close enough that he could feel the faint heat coming off them. He had been changing the wrap on her wing when it happened. 1 second she was still. The next, she was awake, upright, and had him by the throat before he could blink. He did not move. He did not reach for anything. He kept both hands where they were, one holding the end of the bandage wrap, one resting open on his knee. The Drakethi female stared at him. Her gold eyes were sharp now, nothing like the glazed, half-closed look from before. She was reading him, every small thing, his breathing, his hands, his face. Reed said nothing. He waited. After a long moment, she released him. She pulled her hand back slowly, as if she was testing herself as much as him. Then she looked around the medbay, the low ceiling, the gray walls, the faint hum of the ship's drive through the floor. You are human, she said. Her voice was low and rough, like gravel under moving water. Yes, Reed said. You kept me alive. Tried to. You did most of the work. She looked at her wing. Reed had splinted the torn membrane as best he could using materials meant for other purposes. It was not elegant work, but the membrane had stopped bleeding, and the wing was held in a position that would let it heal without further damage if she did not move it too much. She studied his repair for a long time without speaking. It will hold, Reed said, for now. The burns on your side are the bigger concern. You need to stay still for at least. What is your price? Reed stopped. Sorry. Your price? She turned those gold eyes on him. No species helps a Drakethi without a price. The Velhari wanted trade rights. The Sauron wanted passage through the Brood's outer ring. The humans I have met wanted data. So, what is it? Reed looked at her for a moment. Then he set the bandage wrap down on the tray beside him and sat back in his chair. Nothing, he said. She stared at him. You were dying, Reed said. I'm a medic, that's it. That is not how it works. It's how I work. The silence that followed was not comfortable. She was not a creature who accepted things easily, and Reed could see it, the tension in her jaw, the way her good wings shifted slightly, the look in her eyes that said she was searching for the lie and could not find it. That seemed to bother her more than anything. Darrow appeared in the medbay doorway, took one look at the Drakethi sitting upright and fully conscious, and took one step back. She's awake. Great. That's great. Reed, she's awake. I noticed, Reed said. Is she going to, I mean? Are we? Darrow gestured vaguely at his own throat. We're fine, Reed said. Come in. Darrow came in with the expression of someone walking onto ice they were not sure would hold. He set a tray of food near Reed without taking his eyes off the Drakethi. I made protein broth. I didn't know what I mean. I don't know if she eats. She eats, Reed said. He picked up the cup and held it out toward her. You need fluid, you lost a lot. She looked at the cup, then at him. Then she took it slowly and drank. Darrow let out a breath. Over the next hour, in short pieces, with long silences between them, Reed learned who she was. Not because she volunteered it, she did not, but because he asked careful questions, and she answered them in the way someone answers when they are too tired to keep the walls all the way up. Her name was Sira. She was the chosen heir of the Drakethi brood, a title that carried the weight of her entire species' future, because the Drakethi were old and few, and their succession line was the thing that held their remaining territory and treaties together. Someone did not want that line to continue. The Sundered Claw was what she called them, a faction, Drakethi by blood but long separated from the brood in belief. They wanted the ancient lineage broken. If Sira died, the succession fractured. If it fractured, they could press a rival claim and pull the remaining brood apart from within. They had found her transport. They had hid it without warning. She had gotten to the pod alone. Reed listened to all of it without interrupting. When she finished, he nodded once. Okay, he said. She looked at him. Okay. We'll figure out the next step when you're stronger. You are not involved in this. You're on my ship, Reed said. That makes it my business. She opened her mouth to argue. Then the Grey Wing shuddered, a deep, hard vibration that ran through the floor and up through the chairs. Every screen in the medbay flickered. Captain Waller's voice came over the comm, clipped and tight. Reed, we have a ship dropping out of warp, bearing directly toward us. It is not sending identification. A pause. It is Drakethi design. Sira was already moving, swinging her legs off the bed, wing half raised despite the splint. Reed stood up. You are not ready. I did not ask your opinion, she said. I know, Reed said, moving to the door. I'm saying it anyway. He went to get whatever weapons the Grey Wing had. She came right behind him. What he lost. They cut through the hull at 3 points. Reed heard the sound before the alarm, a high, sharp whine of metal giving way, the kind of sound that meant someone on the other side was not trying to be polite about it. The Sundered Claw did not knock. Captain Waller sealed the bridge. Darrow took the upper corridor with the Grey Wing's one working pulse rifle, which was old and had a tendency to fire slightly left of where you aimed. Reed took the lower deck with a short stun baton and a cutting tool he had grabbed from the cargo bay because it was heavy and he could swing it. Sira took nothing. She did not need anything. She moved down the main corridor with her good wing folded tight against her back, the injured one held close, her claws out. She was still hurt. She was still favoring her left side where the burns ran deepest. But there was something in the way she moved, low, deliberate, controlled, that made it clear she had been trained for exactly this kind of thing since before Reed was born. The first Sundered Claw soldier came through the breach near the cargo bay. Sira met him before Reed could get there. It was fast and it was not gentle, and then it was over. Reed stared for half a second. Stop looking, she said, and moved forward. They fought in the corridors for 11 minutes. Reed knew the Grey Wing's layout and the Sundered Claw did not. That was the only advantage they had. He used it. He knew which doors locked from which side, which corridor bent at an angle that made a bad ambush point, which section of the lower deck had a ceiling low enough to matter if you were significantly taller than a human. Darrow took one down from the upper gantry. Reed put 2 more out of the fight with the cutting tool and the stun baton, and a very unpleasant few seconds in the engine accessway. But there were more of them than they had expected, and they had a target. The last 2 soldiers broke through toward the reactor chamber, not to destroy it, Reed realized. To corner Sira, drive her in, cut off her exit. The reactor chamber had 1 entrance and 1 exit, and they were planning to put something in both. Sira knew it too. She moved toward the reactor chamber because she had no other path, and Reed ran after her because he was not going to let her walk into that alone. They came through the reactor chamber door together. One soldier was already inside. He was waiting. In his hand was something Reed had never seen before, a blade, thin and pale, with a faint dark shimmer running along the edge. Not a standard weapon. Something specific. Something brought for one purpose. Reed had read enough in the last 2 hours, listening to Sira talk about the sundered claw, to understand what a venom blade was. It was designed for Drakethi. The venom it carried did not kill immediately. It spread slowly through the bloodstream, targeting the biological system that allowed Drakethi to regenerate, to heal, to use their fire. It would suppress everything that made her what she was, and it would do it permanently. If that blade touched her, she would survive, but she would never be whole again. The soldier moved fast. He had clearly done this before, the feint, the angle, coming in low where the wing would slow her response. Sira saw it and shifted, but her injured side slowed her, and the blade was already inside her guard. Reed moved without deciding to. He stepped in front of her. He got his arms up. The blade came down across both of them. He felt it, a white, total sensation that did not register as pain immediately, only as the sudden understanding that something had changed in a way that could not be unchanged. He heard Sira make a sound he had never heard from her before. He heard the soldier fall. She had taken care of that even as she caught Reed, even as she was already lowering him to the floor. Reed looked down. His arms ended at the shoulder. The cuts were clean. The venom blade was precise. He was aware of this in a calm, distant way, the way you are aware of something enormous before the full weight of it arrives. His brain was already beginning to do the things that brains do in these moments, narrowing focus, slowing time, pulling everything down to immediate basics. He was on the floor. Sira had him. She was pressing her hands over both wounds, and the heat from her palms was extraordinary, like holding your hands near an open furnace, and he understood somewhere beneath rational thought that she was doing something biological, something instinctive, trying to stop the bleeding the only way she had available. Darrow arrived at the reactor chamber door and stopped. The sound he made was not a word. "Get Waller," Sira said. Her voice was strange, not flat, not calm, something underneath it that Reed had not heard from her before. "Now." Darrow went. Reed looked up at her. She was looking down at him with those gold eyes, and her hands had not moved, and she was trembling not from her wounds. He could tell the difference. "Hey," he said. His voice came out quieter than he meant it to. She did not speak. "It's okay," he said. "It is not okay," she said. He did not have an answer for that. So he stayed quiet, and she stayed where she was, and her hands stayed over the wounds, and the heat of them was the last thing he was clearly aware of before the edges of everything started going gray. But before the gray took over, he heard it, Sira's voice, very low, speaking in a frequency that seemed to bypass his ears entirely and arrive somewhere behind his ribs. Ancient sounds, something long and sustained, like a call that expected an answer from very far away. She was calling someone. The last thing Reed thought, before unconsciousness arrived, was that he hoped whoever she was calling would get there in time. The Dragon King comes. The Greywing sensors did not have a classification for what arrived. Darrow was at the console when it dropped out of warp, and for a full 6 seconds he did not say anything, which was the longest Darrow had ever been silent in the 3 years Reed had known him. Then he said, very quietly, "Captain, you need to come look at this." Waller came. She looked at the readout. She looked at the visual feed. Then she sat down in her chair slowly, the way a person sits when their legs have decided to stop cooperating. The object on the screen was not a ship in any conventional sense. It was vast, long, and dark, with a surface that moved faintly, as if breathing. It had structures along its sides that resembled ribs. The front tapered to a shape that was unmistakably a head, not designed to look like one, but actually shaped like one, because whatever this vessel was, it had grown rather than been built. Faint amber light pulsed along the seams between its scales in slow, rhythmic intervals. A Drakethi worldship, living, ancient, the size of a small moon. It is not appearing on the galactic registry, Darrow said, still in that same quiet voice. It is not appearing on any registry. Because it predates every registry that exists, Waller said. The comm opened without a request from either side. No signal handshake. No standard greeting protocol. The voice that came through was enormous, not in volume, but in weight, like something that had been speaking for so long it no longer needed to raise itself to be heard. Greywing, just that. Just the name of their small, battered salvage ship, spoken by something so old it made the word sound like a historical reference. Waller leaned toward the comm. "This is Captain Inez Waller of the Greywing. We are a registered salvage vessel operating under. My daughter is on your ship." The bridge went very still. "She is alive," Waller said carefully. "She is with our medic. There has been an incident. There were injuries." A silence that lasted exactly long enough to be uncomfortable. "I am coming aboard." It was not a request. He came alone, which surprised all of them. No guard, no escort, no procession. Just Elder Vaughn, and the word elder did not begin to cover what he was. He filled the Greywing's cargo bay in a way that had nothing to do with physical size, though he was large enough that he had to angle his head to clear the door. His scales had fused over centuries into something harder than ordinary Drakethi plating, layered and dark, like old volcanic stone, with deep amber seams running through them like veins of mineral ore. One of his eyes was clouded. The other was gold, clear, and did not miss anything. He walked to where Sira sat beside Reed. He looked at his daughter for a long moment, reading her the way only a parent can read a child, not her words, not her posture, but all the things underneath both. Then his one clear eye moved to Reed. Reed was propped against the cargo bay wall, pale, drifting in and out of awareness, both shoulders bandaged tight. Sira had not moved from his side in 2 hours. Her hand was still resting near his arm, or where his arm had been, not touching, just near. Elder Vaughn studied this for a long time. Then he spoke directly to Reed. "Human," he said, "did you know what you were doing?" Reed opened his eyes. He looked up at the creature in front of him, ancient, immense, carrying the weight of thousands of years in every line of his face, and he said, in a voice that was tired but clear, "She needed help." Elder Vaughn was still for a moment. Then something shifted in his expression. Not softness exactly, something older than softness, recognition. He turned to Sira. They spoke in Drakethi, low, fast, a language that moved like flame through dry grass. Reed could not follow it, but he watched Sira's face, and he saw the moment something changed in her. A tension she had been holding since the reactor chamber beginning to release, just slightly, like a rope given a half-turn of slack. Elder Vaughn turned back to Reed. "There is a rite," he said. "My people do not speak of it to other species. It has not been performed in 400 years." He paused. "It cannot restore what you lost. Nothing can do that, but it can give the dead its due weight." Another pause longer. "It will not be painless, and it will mark you in ways that cannot be undone." Reed looked at him. "What does it do?" "It makes you ours," Elder Vaughn said simply. "Not property, not servant. Ours as in protected, named, acknowledged. No faction, no council, no power in this galaxy may touch you without answering to the Drakethi brood." He held Reed's eyes. "And it will do one thing more. Something the rite has not done in so long that I am not certain what form it will take for a human. The fire remembers those who earn it." Sira spoke then. "Father, I want to offer it." Elder Vaughn looked at her for a long moment. Something passed between them, an old understanding, something that did not need words. He nodded once. Sira looked at Reed. You do not have to accept, I will not ask it of you, but I am offering. Reed looked at her, then at Elder Vaughn, then at Darrow, who was standing in the corner with his arms crossed and red eyes that he was very clearly trying to pretend were not red. Okay, Reed said. You understand what I told you, Elder Vaughn said. It cannot be undone. I heard you, Reed said. Okay. Darrow turned around and faced the wall, and made a sound that was absolutely not crying. Elder Vaughn placed one enormous hand carefully over both of Reed's bandaged shoulders and began to speak in a register, so low it was more vibration than sound, a frequency that Reed felt in his teeth and his ribs, and somewhere he did not have a name for. The Greywing hummed with it. Outside, the worldship pulsed amber in the dark. Ancient fire, new bone. Reed woke up in fire, and it did not burn him. That was the first thing he understood, that the light surrounding him was real, that the heat was real, that it moved across his skin like warm water rather than flame, and that none of it was hurting him at all. He was lying on a flat surface of dark stone in a chamber he had never seen before. The walls were high and curved, covered in markings he could not read, carved deep, filled with the same amber light that ran through Drakethi's scales. The ceiling was open to space. He could see stars. He was inside the worldship. He lay there for a while, breathing slowly, taking stock. His head was clear. His body felt strange, not painful but different, dense in some places, changed. He looked down at his shoulders. The bandages were gone. Where his arms had ended, something new had grown. He stared at them for a long time. They were not human arms. They were not replacements in any mechanical or medical sense. They were large, larger than his original arms, built differently, structured for a different kind of strength. The surface was covered in fine scales, obsidian black, with thin amber lines running through them in branching patterns that matched, almost exactly, the gold veining in Sira's own scales. They ended in hands, roughly human in shape, 5-fingered, but each finger terminated in a long, curved claw, dark and dense, with a faint heat coming off them even at rest. Reed flexed them. They responded, fully immediately, as if they had always been there. He could feel with them the texture of the stone beneath him, the faint movement of air in the chamber. He could feel something else too, something that had no human comparison, a low, warm awareness, a kind of background hum in his new bones, like a signal he could not quite translate but could not ignore. He sat up. Sira was sitting on the floor near the chamber entrance, watching him. She had been there for a while, he thought. She did not look surprised that he was awake. She looked like someone who had been waiting and was relieved the waiting was over. They work, Reed said. His voice came out steadier than he expected. Yes, she said. He looked at the claws again, flexed them once more slowly. They're warm. They will always be warm, she said. The fire lives in them now. Not enough to burn, not unless you choose it, but enough to last. Reed looked at her. Can I choose it? In time, if you learn, she paused. My father thinks you will learn faster than expected. He says humans are strange that way. You adapt to things that should take centuries and you do it in months, and then you act as if it is nothing impressive. Reed almost laughed. He turned the claws over in the amber light of the chamber, studying the patterns. What do they mean, the markings? Sira stood up and walked over, crouching in front of him. She pointed to a pattern along the back of his left hand, a branching line that split into 3 and then rejoined. This one means dead acknowledged, given freely, not taken. She moved to the right forearm, where a single unbroken line ran from wrist to elbow. This one means the fire recognized you. That does not always happen. My father said the last time it happened to an outsider was before the Galactic Council existed. Reed was quiet for a moment. What does it mean practically, for me, day to day? Sira met his eyes. It means that every Drakethi alive will know what you carry the moment they see you. It means the sundered claw cannot touch you without my father's response following in the same breath. It means, she paused, choosing her words carefully, that you are named. In our oldest language, you are named as one who acted without calculation. The fire does not forget that. Darrow appeared in the chamber entrance. He took one look at Reed's new arms, opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again, and then sat down on the floor right there in the doorway. "I'm fine," Reed said. "Those are claws," Darrow said. "Yes. You have dragon claws." "I'm aware." "Reed," Darrow pressed both hands over his face. "Reed, you have dragon claws." "Darrow." "I'm fine," a pause. "I'm not fine, are you fine?" "I'm fine," Reed said and meant it. Which surprised him. It was around this point that the world ship's comm system chimed, and then chimed again more urgently. Sira stood. Elder Vaughn's voice came through, calm as ever, carrying its usual impossible weight. "A Galactic Council vessel has arrived," he said. "They are hailing us. The sundered claw has filed a formal grievance." A pause. "They are calling it an unlawful biological modification of a registered sapient being." Darrow lifted his head from his hands. Are you serious? Reed almost died and they're filing paperwork." "They are also challenging Sira's fitness to lead," Elder Vaughn continued. "They claim her judgment has been compromised by attachment to a human." The pause that followed was very brief. "The council arbiter's name is set. He is Velhari. He is insistent." Sira's expression did not change. But Reed had spent enough time watching her face to read the thing underneath. A controlled, focused anger. The kind that had been building for a long time and had just found its direction. Reed stood up. He was steadier than he expected on his feet. He flexed the obsidian claws once, feeling the warmth in them, and then looked at Sira. "When's the hearing?" he asked. "They want us at the council station within a standard day," she said. "Okay," Reed said. He looked at the claws one more time, then he looked up. "Let's go." Darrow made a sound from the doorway. Am I coming? Because I feel like I should come, for moral support, and also because I genuinely cannot be left alone with the information that my crewmate now has dragon claws and not tell anyone." Reed looked at Sira. Sira looked at Darrow. "He can come," she said. Darrow stood up, visibly pulling himself together. "Great, good, I'll get my jacket." What humans do. The Galactic Council's hearing chamber was built to make things feel small. Reed understood this the moment he walked in. The ceiling was high enough to lose in shadow. The seating tiers rose in a half circle, filled with representatives from dozens of species: Velhari, Sauron, the tall gray-skinned Marin, the clustered delegates from the Outer Rim species whose names Reed did not know. All of them watching. All of them already forming opinions about the human walking beside the Drakethi heir with obsidian claws where his arms should have been. He was wearing a borrowed jacket that did not fit right over the new shoulders. He had not been able to find one that did. Arbiter Set stood at the central podium, a Velhari, insectoid, with 6 articulated limbs and compound eyes that caught light from every direction at once. He had the precise, clipped posture of someone who had filed a great many documents and considered this the most powerful thing a person could do. The sundered claws advocate spoke first. He was Drakethi, old, thin-scaled, with the careful voice of someone who had practiced this argument many times. He spoke about lineage, about the purity of succession, about the danger of a brood heir who had formed what he called an emotional dependency on a member of a chaos species. A term he used 4 times, each time with a small, deliberate pause after it. He said that the rite of debt fire had been performed not out of ancient tradition, but out of sentiment. That sentiment had no place in brood succession. That a leader who acted on feeling rather than strategy was a leader who would make decisions that cost lives. He finished. The chamber was quiet. Arbiter Set turned to Sira. "The heir may respond." Sira did not look at the advocate, she looked at Reed. Then she turned to the chamber. "I will not argue succession law," she said. "I will tell you what happened. Then you can decide what it means." She told it plainly. The escape pod, the debris field, a crew with no stake in Drakethi politics finding a dying stranger and choosing to help her anyway. A medic who did not know her name, did not know her title, did not ask what she was worth before deciding that she was worth saving. A reactor chamber, a venom blade, a human who stepped in front of it without being asked. She told it without drama. She did not reach for emotion. She just said what was true in order as it had happened. When she finished, Set turned to Reed. "The human may speak." Reed was aware of how many eyes were on him. He was not comfortable with it. He stood up anyway. He did not have a prepared speech. He had thought about it on the way over and decided that anything he prepared would come out wrong. So he said the thing that was true. "I was a medic on a salvage ship," he said. "I found someone hurt. I helped her. That's all I did." He paused. "I didn't know who she was. I didn't know anything about the brood or the sundered claw or succession law. She was dying and I could do something about it, so I did." He stopped there. The chamber was very quiet. Set opened his mouth to move to the next procedural step. Before he could, a voice spoke from the upper tiers. It was an old voice, thin with age but clear, belonging to a figure Reed did not recognize. Small, pale-scaled, wrapped in dark fabric. A species he could not name. "I would like to speak," this figure said, "if the chamber permits." Set hesitated, then nodded. The old figure stood slowly. "My species has observed humanity for 160 years, it said. We have kept records. We have watched them in wars and disasters in the quiet moments in between." A pause. "The sundered claw calls them a chaos species. They are not wrong. Humans are chaotic. They are inconsistent. They contradict themselves. They make decisions with their hearts that their minds have not approved." Another pause, longer. "And they are the only species we have ever recorded that will cross a debris field to keep a stranger alive without first calculating the cost. Not sometimes, routinely, as a reflex." The chamber was still. The air was not compromised by attachment to a human, the old figure said. The air correctly identified what was in front of her. The figure sat back down. "That is all." The vote was not close. The sundered claw's challenge failed. Sira's succession was confirmed. The brood sanction against the sundered claw's leadership passed through Elder Vaughn without ceremony, which meant that somewhere in the outer ring, several powerful people were having a very bad day, and Elder Vaughn was personally ensuring it stayed that way. Arbiter Set closed his files, looked at Reed's claws one more time with his compound eyes, and left without saying anything further. Reed chose to consider that a good sign. Darrow, who had been sitting in the observation area behind a railing, found Reed in the corridor outside the chamber. His jacket was wrinkled, and he had clearly been very tense for the last 2 hours, but he was grinning now. "The old one," Darrow said. "In the upper tier, do you know what species that was?" "No," Reed said. "Neither does anyone else, apparently. Set's assistant told me they've been attending council sessions for 900 years, and no one has ever been able to get them to file a formal species registration." Darrow paused. "They've never spoken in a session before. Not once. 900 years of attending and they never spoke." Reed looked back toward the chamber entrance. Sira came out a moment later. She had been speaking with Elder Vaughn, who had attended by projection, a column of deep amber light that held his shape with perfect stillness. The projection had gone now. She walked toward Reed and stopped a few feet away. "It is done," she said. "Yeah," Reed said. She looked at him for a moment. "Where will you go now?" Reed looked down at the obsidian claws. He flexed them once slowly, feeling the warmth in the bone, the amber lines catching the light from the corridor overhead. He thought about the Greywing, which was docked in Bay 47 and needed 3 repairs he had been putting off for 2 months. He thought about the salvage route they had been on before all of this started, which felt like something from a different life. Then he looked at Sierra. "I don't know," he said. "You?" She was quiet for a second. "I do not know either," a pause, "but I would like to find out." Reed nodded once. Darrow looked between the two of them and decided this was a good moment not to say anything. For the second time in 2 days, he managed it. The three of them walked back toward the docking bay, through a corridor that hummed with the distant business of the galaxy going on around them, indifferent and vast and very much unchanged. Reed walked through it with ancient fire in his bones and new claws at the ends of his hands, and for the first time in a long time, he had no idea what came next. It felt strangely, like exactly the right place to be.